Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome MIT Cecil and Ida Green Education Professor of Aeronautics and Astronautics and AIAA President-elect Danielle Hastings to the stage.
So thank you. Today we're going to explore Space Workforce 2030, a diversity pledge to go boldly together. Let me start by introducing our distinguished panel. First of all, just going down the row here, Jay Patel. Jay Patel is the Vice President of Remote Sensing Programs for the Payload and Ground Systems Division from Northrop Grumman. He's a champion for building a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture, serving as co-chair of the company's Space Systems DEI Council. So next, Steve Isakowitz. Steve Isakowitz is a recognized leader across the government, commercial, space, and technology sector. He's currently serving as president and CEO of the Aerospace Corporation, a leading architect for the nation's space programs, where he heads up efforts to outpace threats to the country's national security. Under his guidance, Aerospace's national workforce of more than 4,500 employees provides objective technical expertise and thought leadership on the hardest problems in space. He's also the person who initialized the Space Workforce 2030, the Diversity Pledge, to go boldly together. Sonia Phares is Vice President of the Ignite organization within Lockheed Martin's space business area. As an innovation leader for space, she's responsible for driving game-changing research, technology acceleration, and development of discriminating products for internal and external sales. She knows what it takes to consistently deliver on mission priorities, for space systems. I'm going to ask the panelists a set of questions, which they've all seen, so it's not like they don't know what's coming. And then you will also have the opportunity to ask questions, and I will be able to get them up on this iPad up here. But just to initialize this, what is Space Workforce 2030? It's an industry-wide pledge where the industry comes together to demonstrate that this is a top priority for us all, and understanding that working together in this area will benefit everyone. So it's both the companies are committed, there's an executive commitment. The commitment starts at the top with the CEOs and the top space executives, and there's accountability. The companies, the executives hold ourselves accountable by publicly sharing aggregated industry data annually at the Space Symposium. The pledge has 4 goals: significantly increase the number of women and employees of color in the collective technical workforce, significantly increase the number of employees and women of color who hold senior leadership positions in the collective technical workforce, work with universities to increase the percentage of women and people of color receiving aerospace engineering degrees, and sponsor K-12 programs to collectively reach over 5 million underrepresented students annually. So that's the pledge. So now we have to hear how some of the companies are actually doing. Okay, so Sonia, to set the stage, can you talk about the moment we find ourselves in space today and the opportunities in front of us? Why is a strong, diverse workforce important for our industry's success?
All right, thank you. From a standpoint of where we started, I think we have made a great improvement. We have seen a rise in numbers across the industry in all of those goals that you stated. I will tell you, I'm not sure that I think it's significant. I think we still have a lot of work to do. And the more diverse that we have, the diversity we have, every study shows the more diversity that you have, the better ideas that you get. And what I've also found in leading the new Ignite organization is I was listening to the last speaker, and they talked about people and change, and maybe people are resistant to change. In the space industry, I see people who are willing to explore, who are willing to really try something new, try something different. But I don't see that we are maybe trying as many different things as we could on how we bring a new change, how we get that diversity into our organizations. So I think that's where we really need to focus. I think we've made the commitments. I think we've tried some things, but I think additional significant effort is really required because I think our numbers are still pretty low. We're at maybe 25, 30%. Our attrition rates are still pretty high. We get people in, we don't keep them. So how can we really make sure that that inspiration and those opportunities are available for everyone? Because we will not make it without a diverse workforce.
Thank you. So Jay, next question is for you. Our industry has talked for years about the need to increase diversity and representation. Why haven't these previous efforts been successful? What needs to change to see the kind of progress we want to see?
Yeah, Dan, that's an excellent question. Thank you very much. So the way I tend to think about this is there's external forces and there's internal forces. So externally, why is it not making as much of a significant progress as we need, as Sonia just talked about? Well, the competition is much, much more now. We all know that just STEM fields in general, it's difficult to fill those roles for what we need as a nation, but in space, even more so. So the classic skill sets that we used to rely on, whether it was aerospace engineering or rocket science, science or classic engineering disciplines, we don't have enough of those, and even the ones that we do have, there's other industries that need them as well. We've all seen the rise in technology, so the competition for those skill sets and those experiences is just that much harder. So that's one of the external, and I think all of us would agree, space is booming in the right way. It's really expanding and exploding, and so the opportunities are that much greater. So not only do we need that strong pipeline, but that pipeline has just increased. Internally, I think we tend to put obstacles in front of ourselves. I know I get a chance to go talk to students from K all the way through 12, and we talk about what a space career could look like. And a lot of times, some of the younger kids would say, well, I'm not smart. You have to be a genius to work in space. And I look at them and say, well, I'm not smart either, and yes, you can. So I think we need to make sure they understand that you don't have to be a classic, what they perceive on TV is the best candidate to work in space. We need to connect with children going through their education at all different ages and talk to them about what opportunities they can have in the space business, because it's immense, right? I think you all would agree that there's a lot of different backgrounds, experiences, and skill sets that if we add to the talent that we need to solve these hard problems, we're just that much better for it. So I think internally we have to do a much better job of letting them know that, no, you don't have to be that classic definition to make an impact in space. You can probably utilize any of your interests and disciplines or majors, and they translate very well to solving some of these missions in space.
And if I could just add a little bit, I think it's so important when you talked about talking to everyone, K through 12. Children lose interest in the STEM technologies around the 4th to 6th grade. So we need to be really careful that we're at those early ages encouraging and showing and demonstrating that you're right. We don't all have to be the Big Bang Theory, right? We don't have to be Sheldon Cooper. I have a Russian degree myself and a master's in systems engineering. So diverse backgrounds are so critically important, and thinking a different way. And I think we really do need to encourage that. I just love what you said. It was great.
Great point. Thank you.
So Jay, you use the word exploding. That's not a word I like to hear around
in a good way.
rocket launches. Change the word, okay.
Booming.
Booming, oh, booming, okay.
Okay, that's good.
So Steve, you initiated Space Workforce 2030. So tell us about it, and tell us about how it's helping strengthen diversity and representation in our industry, and how is it different from what has been done before, and what have been some of the early successes?
Great. First of all, Dan, thank you and the AOAA for the opportunity to talk about this important topic and be here with Jay and Sonia. Before I answer the question, I want to say it's a little unfair. No one told me that we were going to be following the astronauts on the space station. I mean, that was kind of like... Yeah. Also, I'm not even sure they were really in orbit because the connection from space was better than I get on my cell phone.
Yeah, it was so good. That's
I'm just wondering some AI thing might have
been. Well, but you could tell from the hair.
Yeah, okay, yeah, deep fake, sure. All right, to answer your question, why do we do Space Workforce 2030? Sonia really hit it on the head, which was, if we look as an industry, yes, we've made improvements. One of my more interesting pictures that I look at is during the Apollo 11 when Saturn V took off at the control center there at the Cape, and you have a sea of white gentlemen with ties on, looking up at the sky. And if you look real closely, there's one woman you could find in the deep background. Yeah. We've come a long way since those days. But to Sonia's point, actually, if you look at the numbers in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, we talk a lot about greater diversity, but the numbers really haven't ticked up as much as one would have hoped. So the birth of the whole Space Workforce 2030 is sort of what Jay was saying is, there's sort of like this sense that there's a fixed pool of talent. Our industry is doing incredibly well. It's growing leaps and bounds, both from the government side and on the commercial side. And we're kind of all fighting for that same pool of talent, and that talent is moving between all of our companies. So the thought was, instead of us trying to fight over a fixed pie, why don't we band together like superheroes and sort of try to increase the size of the pie? So we had the idea of finding like-minded executives that would come together, and when we made the first few phone calls to those executives, a few of them said something I thought was brilliant to me, which was, no, I don't want to do this if this is just some feel-good kind of thing, but if you're really going to make a difference, I'm willing to go in on it. And so we had a goal of getting 10 companies together, and we wound up with 30. Now, what's unique about it, to your question? Yes, if you go online and Google, there's a lot of these executive diversity initiatives that go on, but really what makes us really different is it's an industry-led initiative. 30 companies that truly represent the span of our industry, and I anticipate more to come. Also, these are executives that are signing off on it, so it's not just folks from HR that's saying this is important. We literally don't bring in companies in the program unless they sign off on it. And then here's the big kicker. We hold ourselves accountable by every year we put out a report with metrics that we pull together to show that actually against the 4 goals you mentioned, that we're making real progress. And I think that sort of holds our feet to the fire. Interesting enough, we've actually had other industries approach us about trying to model what we're doing, and so I think that's a really promising sign.
Well, let's just follow a little bit upon that. Since you see the aggregated data, what is it telling you specifically about the current state of diversity and representation in industry? So where do we have more work to do?
Yeah, we absolutely have more work to do. In our first year that we pulled the information together, we found, we looked at our technical workforce, and we found across the 30 companies, 18% were women, and it was 33% were people of color. It's still below where it needs to be, but the thing that was very promising is we looked at our collective internship class. They were anywhere from 40 to 60% above those numbers in each of those categories, respectively. We also collect metrics that not that we're just bringing in interns, but actually converting interns into jobs. And they're at about the same rate that they're reflective. So clearly, I think we're doing a good job of starting to bring it in from the bottom. But where it doesn't show up as so strong, if you look at the leadership level, the leaderships of our collective companies, it's about 25% below across what we see across our technical workforce. So clearly, the challenge in the coming years is to actually see, not that we're bringing in these young, talented folks with diverse backgrounds, but that actually it's bubbling up into the senior ranks.
Okay. Sonia, next question for you. So for you out there in the audience, be thinking of questions and sending them in, I'll call them up in a minute. You mentioned about this loss in early ages. So space has a unique potential to captivate and inspire people. How do you translate the early initial excitement that the students may have into a sustainable path towards a STEM career?
I think the best way to do that is to get them involved. We have organizations that we support like Rocket Girls, and it is really hands-on, build a rocket. Girls Inc., when we do a lot of software, we do a lot of cyber, we work with the Girl Scouts. So working with the different organizations and bringing them hands-on as opposed to, and I'll tell you, I am a book learner myself, not a hands-on learner. I have to read the book first. I read the instructions every time. But then you got to get in there and you got to play with it. And I think that's what we really need to do because, to Jay's earlier point, people are like, I'm not smart enough. Well, if we can show them you can build a rocket, then by gosh, you are smart enough. So I think that's what it really is. Get them involved at an early age, hands-on, go to the schools, make sure that people are actually doing something as opposed to just listening. I think that is critically important.
Okay. Can I add on?
Please.
Real quick? I really like the word inspire and inspiration that you used earlier. I think if you ask many of us what got us into the space industry, something inspired us way back, right? And for me, and I'll just age myself, it was the space shuttles. I was glued to the TV for every launch and every landing. It just was really neat to me, and that got me thinking about what I wanted to do, right? And you could, all of the different examples, the ISS, I hope James Webb Telescope is inspiring our next generation. I think we need to do a better job of making sure that that excitement translates. And just for me, right, Dan, you talked about my background. I can't talk to people about what I do. It's restricted.
Right.
I have to find ways to connect what that mission is and why I come to work, and hopefully they understand that, because I think that's what's going to allow them to go, I want to do that. I'll figure out how to get there, but I want to do that. So I think that word inspiration was really key to how we can interface with that next generation of talent.
Yeah, in fact,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Sonia, I think you're, again, spot on. One of the things we have found on the space workforce effort is we collected how many K through 12 students were collectively touching upon, and the number of 5 million came up. That sounds like a massive number. But here's the real question, and I think it can hit on what Jay's saying on. But what impact are we really having? So it's one thing to take these students and say, hey, let's go see a rocket launch. Oh, that was really cool. And then they go back to their daily lives, and that sort of takes over. So particularly when you get to like first generation students and so on, you've got to somehow not only find them, but to be able to actually do the follow through. So again, a lot of what we're trying to do through the initiative is trying to say, what programs actually have staying impact with these students that'll actually show that it wasn't just a cool event, but it actually brought them all the way to pursue college.
Well, and to Jay's point and your point, we're doing a lot better, I think, advertising space as well. I mean, James Webb and the NIRCam, that was a fantastic partnership. But to be able to, really make a press release about the pictures coming out and how we did the science behind those and what that means to be able to look at those pictures. They're not just beautiful pictures. The asteroid Bennu, that we just got the sample return for that. And scientists are so excited, they're arguing over which particle they want to look at from the one cup that we got from the asteroid. But we talk about it more, and we talk about, again, the space shuttle kind of went up and landed, and we all got excited. Now we're talking about what does it mean that we can see those pictures from the NIRCam and James Webb? What does it mean that we got the asteroid Bennu particles back? And I think that continues that conversation when you can have and anybody can ask a question, and say, hey, what is that? So I think that engagement really does inspire.
So, Jerry, I want to follow up on something you said earlier. So I was inspired both by Star Trek, the original series, TOS, and Apollo, okay? So that's great. But then I also struggled mightily with thermodynamics. Mightily with it. Yeah. So that was my roadblock. So what were some of the common roadblocks that young students who might be interested in STEM encounter, and how can we help them to get past those?
Yeah, I struggle with thermodynamics as well.
Probably how it's taught.
So I'm going to use the word connection.
Yeah.
I think they struggle with connecting what they're interested in, what they want to do, how they're going to get there, to how it can translate to a magnificent career that actually allows them to achieve something even more than they thought. And we've talked a little bit about that already this morning. I think where we can help, we need to help with, I'll say the conduit for them to the world is their leadership. So as it's teachers or mentors or examples in the community of what we can do based on your interests. So I think organizations like ours, and I know that's part of the effort, is we are engaging with students as young as kindergarten all the way through different areas of their scholastic career with ways that we can arm our teachers. I know one thing we do in an organization is we bring our local teachers in every year, and we have a week-long conference with them. We connect them with our industry, what skills we're looking for, what type of thought is needed, because they're at the front cutting edge of translating that for us. So we need to engage with the communities that our children and our folks in the younger stage of the pipeline are coming through to make sure we give them support. And it could be us visiting schools and talking to them about some of our programs. And the one program I am allowed to talk about is
not all of them.
Solar.
Yeah,
not all of them. For ones we can, we take a little solar energy kit and we talk about how we can take solar energy and beam it down to the ground to help people in need. Now, it's no longer just, oh, I want to do something in space. I want to help people. I can help people by putting this system together and giving them power after a hurricane or a flood or something so that they can get well. So I think we have to just take a look at that connection and make sure we do our part for all sides. And I talked about the other one earlier. We tend to put roadblocks in front of ourselves. We don't know it. I know I did. I put roadblocks in front of me because I thought, oh man, this is going to be hard or this is going to be challenging. Think about thermodynamics. Think about us three on the stage here today. Our organizations work together to solve those really hard problems. We can't do that by ourselves. And that's one thing when I go visit schools, I always let folks know, and I use, for the younger kids, how many people do you think it took to get an iPad made or an Xbox, designed and delivered? And they usually say like, oh, about 5, 10? And you let them know that it's not all on your shoulders. When you enter this industry, you have fantastic partners you can lean on and collaborate with. So making that connection from their interest to where it can take them, I think is important, and that's where we can play a role with this initiative.
Okay. Can I just follow up on Jay's point, which is really important? I know we talk to younger students, they get very excited, astronauts, exploration, footprints on the moon, Webb telescope, sample returns, all really exciting. But as these students get in that 4th through 6th grade, where you start to lose it, I think one of the things we as an industry could do a better job is to how we talk about our industry, not just in terms of exploration, super exciting, but benefits back here on Earth. And this is Jay's point. I think issues on climate change, helping the economy grow through GPS and weather systems, even national security. I know that one's a harder one to talk about, but it's a rough world right now. I mean, and you could see firsthand with the war in Ukraine the difference that Starlink has made, and these are things you can openly talk about that, to make the world more transparent through this proliferation of capability is really making a difference. So I think to the extent the students sort of feel like there's an opportunity to make a difference here locally, in disadvantaged communities, globally, national security-wise, I think it gives a whole new sense of meaning. So it's not just about you have to be an astronaut, otherwise don't apply.
All right.
Yeah, and Steve, to your point, I think that's, I think we do maybe limit when we talk about space. I mean, we talk engineering, we talk astronauts, et cetera, but we all know to run our companies, you need the finance team, you need our program managers, people who are really great planners and organizers, our human resources teams, contracts, subcontracts teams. It goes on and on and on, and we don't talk about that. And there's kids there's like, I'm not really a science person. Well, maybe are you a really good planner? Are you going to be a great program manager? What can you do? Are you finance? A lot of math. So I think that opening that aperture as well on everyone you need, all the different skills you need for space. Because I know we're STEM, but sometimes that limits those conversations for the kids who are like, oh, no, that's not me. I'm not that.
I'm not good at math.
I'm not good at math. That's okay. I mean, what are you good at? Right. Because we need it all. We need it all.
So time for an audience question, and any of you can answer this if you wish. So the leading question in terms of upvotes is, are there other industries that are getting this right that we could learn from or borrow from them? I mean, is anybody in the technical industry, that people build computers, people build planes, etc., anybody getting it right?
I haven't seen it. I mean, there are some industries like biology and medicine and so on that sometimes can gather more diversity, and there's more gender equity in industries like that. I've not become aware that they've done anything sort of proactive, as much as the students have sort of determined from themselves areas of interest. One of the things that we're doing as part of the initiative of the space workforce is we're actually teamed up with aerospace engineering departments. In fact, Dan, you made the introduction, the Aerospace Department Chairs Association. It represents 90 aerospace engineering departments throughout our university system. And they're collecting data, and they show the data to us that aerospace engineering is usually well below other departments.
Yes.
And I think part of it has to do, by the way, that we tell the story, that the students come in freshman year and they sort of see which ones look more like them and which ones maybe are more appealing. To the extent they oversimplify what we do, I think that also sometimes can deter. So part of the initiative is, again, to try to teaming up with universities in a partnership to be able to do that. But to the question, I actually have not found an industry, because we were looking to say, oh, there are things we could steal from best practices. I'm not aware. So in fact, we got approached, interesting since I'm in LA, we got approached by the entertainment industry.
Really?
And they wanted to also do a very similar initiative.
Yeah, can I put stomp on what you
Yes.
said, Steve? I agree with you. When I wear my DE&I hat, I get an opportunity to go to a lot of different conferences across the country, and they all talk about the same issue and problem. So I think you're absolutely on point. And maybe the funnel maybe isn't the problem, but remember, it's not just getting the right perspective of thought into the industry, it's getting the right number in, but then keeping them there and growing them. There's different stages of work that we have to do. So there are other industries that I think struggle with one, or if not all three of those steps to getting them where they want to be.
I think one of the things that we need to look at is, for STEM, we're very much, four-year college and, these particular focuses of study. And if we look at not necessarily industry, but jobs that have a higher diversity level than our jobs do, it's people who have a different success path. They can't go to college. Maybe they can only go to a 2-year college. So we really are trying, I think, as an industry to say, how do we bring those people in? Because we can train them and they can grow up then to be our engineers. And I think that's something that maybe just kind of is in its infancy, but I think looking at those different success paths is really important. How do we bring in technicians that are high school graduates? Because I can tell you our high school graduates are phenomenal. They are so smart. So let's bring them in. Let's bring in 2-year college degrees. So I think maybe that's a path we need to take that's a little different from the 4-year that we normally look at.
Excellent point.
I want to ask you another question from the audience here. Any thoughts and actions we can take to inspire women in space? At 18% in the space workforce 2030 data, there appears to be a lot of opportunity. How do we inspire more women?
I'll start as the woman on the panel. I think one of the things is to be present. It's really hard for women to see a place for themselves in space when you do go to a conference or a classroom, or you look at the board of directors, you look at the organizations, and it is mostly men. And you're thinking, is there a place for me there? And I started with Lockheed Martin 34 years ago, and I can tell you I had a private women's restroom. It was lovely, but, and I measure, it seems silly, but I measure by, is there a line at the women's room? Yes, okay. It's very important that you see someone like you, and someone like you is actually making it up the chain. And it's very, very important. So I think, again, getting out there, engaging, being present, and sharing those experiences is critically important. Because if you don't see someone like you in those organizations, and our technical as well, not just our executive branch, but also our technical branch, our fellows and senior fellows have a very, very low diversity range, but our technical talent groups and our associate fellows are much higher percentages. So we're seeing the pipeline, but we need to get people up there so someone can go, that's someone like me. I can do that if they can do that. So mentorship and really being present, I think, is important.
Any other observations on that?
No, I agree. Seeing someone that looks like you at a leadership sometimes can make all the difference in the world. So I think it's not only at the senior levels at our company, I think it's also at the board levels at our company that we also need to do a better job of paying attention to that, of the things that we can do there. And nurturing that pipeline, whether it's finding employee resource groups or business resource group, but just individuals that can share and work together. One of the things that we've also tried to sponsor in the past is at universities. You'll find that diversity tends to drop off as you go from undergrad to grad to PhD. The numbers get really small, really fast. So like we had an initiative where we worked with PhD women who have gotten together to form their own conference that we had sponsored, or those that are early in their careers as faculty. So again, sort of create that sense of cohort and support that's out there.
Yeah, I'll just add, I was actually going to say, well, Sonia's doing it, right? I know how busy you are. but you took the time to come here and got on stage here, which is inspirational for the next generation. So thank you very much for that. You also touched on allyship and mentoring. Steve and I certainly can do our part, but I can't give a complete perspective that perhaps you can to some of our female talent growing up. So I always make it a point to do whatever I can, but then suggest one of our female leaders in our organization to partner up with an inspiring young talent growing up. So I think that's one place that we can play. We also need to listen. We also need to understand what the challenges, questions, and issues are for our talent coming up. Because as much as we can look at data and try to find the most impactful things we can do, it's a person-by-person conversation. So creating those forums where our talent is comfortable talking about, oh, I don't know if I can ask this, but make it a cozier environment that they can ask with a couple leaders that can say, I had that same question growing up through my career. This is how I handled it. So I think making sure we hear as much as possible by each case, that's how we can really try to remove those obstacles for them individually to make progress.
All right, so Jay, given what you said, let me give you the next question.
Okay.
Getting diverse employees into the workforce is just a start. You talked about the value of role models. But what can be done to retain those employees? And in particular, how do you provide opportunities that allow them to advance to leadership roles so they can be much more visible?
Yeah, so as I talked about the funnel earlier, step one is getting the right talent in, but probably more important, I think any organization would agree, money spent keeping people happy and growing and challenged is way more important than spending it on getting new talent in. We need all of it to work together. So I know at Northrop, we don't let's just get them in, and here's your first week onboarding and orientation, here's the bathroom, here's your desk, and here's a conference room. But we are very purposeful about, T-5 or 10 before they even start. What's their first week, their first month, their 6 months, and first year? And then we have different programs that address early talent, mid talent, and senior talent. A lot of times you can't forget about our senior talent, right? They're awesome and fantastic, but that doesn't mean, oh, they're probably happy, they're good, let's leave them alone. So you really have to make sure you gear programs that address each step of somebody's career. And by the way, after they retire, we still want them back. We still want their help. So we also make sure that we stay in touch with folks that do want to give back, because many of us in our careers, we come to a certain point where it's our turn to just pay it forward. We've done what we wanted to, but now we want to get that next generation going. So you have to be very mindful and purposeful of those onboarding opportunities. Now, again, we can look at data, we can look at other programs, and we can do the formal things. I found a lot of the boots on ground is much more important. So I like to break it down really quickly and really try to understand individually. I might, I have a business unit, I have different operational units. It might be very different just within my own operational units. Maybe they're on a different site, or they're working with a different customer. So that's a different culture that they may bring in. So it's important to listen to each group as far down as you can break it down to understand their needs and their wants, and then try to tailor a program that will help them. That's tough for large organizations, but I do really think you need to understand your overall goal, understand the boots on ground issues and interests, and then try to marry a program up that connects those two.
Yeah, if I could just foot stomp Jay's point, we talk about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. We focus on diversity. Sometimes we get into talking about numbers, but to Jay's point, the numbers don't work if people are leaving as fast as they're coming in. And the key to retention, to me, is the equity and inclusion.
Yes.
If you don't have that, if you don't have the culture, if you don't make it where people feel they can bring themselves to work and thrive in that environment and feel safe in that environment, then it won't work. And it's got to start at the top.
Yeah.
And those business resource groups are so critically important. Steve, you had mentioned those before. But I also want to, Jay, you kind of glossed over allyship, and I think that is so critically important. As we are up here amplifying each other, right? We're maybe disagreeing a little, amplifying each other, but having that conversation, I think even in a meeting, is so critically important to make sure we're amplifying each other and making sure that everyone is heard and every voice is heard. Meaning not, and this used to happen all the time, I'd say something and then a man would say it 5 minutes later and everybody'd cheer. But now it's about, Jay, I just love what Jay just said. It's about the amplification, and that allyship, showing that support is really critical, because it does give the diverse individual that feeling of I am wanted and my opinion is wanted. So I really think that's critical, and I don't want you guys to downplay that because it's always been important to me, and I know it's important to all of our diverse candidates.
Yeah, Sonia, thank you for that. I'm pretty sure we could all agree that we wouldn't be here today without allies, advocates, sponsors, people helping us. And I want to touch on something you said, Steve, because a lot of people struggle with this, DE&I. What does that mean, right? A lot of people think, well, that's for folks that are different, so that I don't apply to that, I can't help. So I've come up with a very broad and loose definition on DE&I that helps me translate that to folks, and it's very simple. Diversity to me just means everybody is included to be at that table, everyone, right? Regardless of your differences, you're allowed to be at that table. Inclusion is, or equity is, once you're at that table, you're allowed to speak, right? Use your voice, use your thoughts, get that on the table. And then inclusion is, you need to feel valued. We need to do something with what you just said. And that doesn't mean I need to agree with everything you said, but I need to acknowledge it and let you know perhaps if, great idea, but, or great idea, we're gonna, use it. So I hope that helps people translate what DE&I means, because a lot of times, unfortunately, people fall into that trap of, that doesn't apply to me, so you guys do your thing, I'm just gonna, do this. So thank you for bringing that up.
So here's another question aimed at probably at this conference. It says, conference attendance is not diverse. I mean, it's an observation about this one. How do we get more diverse engagement and recruit more diverse participants?
The opening was at conferences?
Well, it says conference attendees, but I think it's aimed at this conference, right?
Yeah, part of it might just be reflective of where we are as an industry, hence, well, we've got to do these things. But to the point on the question is, clearly we've got to show some initiative. We've got to be aware. One of the things that we talk quite a bit at the Aerospace Corporation is, it's not, again, just about bringing people in, but it's developing that talent. And part of the ways you develop that talent is giving other individuals the opportunity to be able to attend conferences, to be able to give presentations at work, to be on special committees or special studies that are being created at work, and be completely mindful of the fact of who you're putting on that, and you're not just sort of bringing in the sort of usual who you know or who you're comfortable with or who's done it in the past. So you really, truly need to be proactive, and
Yes.
I think this is a great opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, we really do look at our conference attendees, and to your point, not is it the usual 20 people you usually invite, but really take a look at all those diversity categories. Do we have diversity in seniority? Are we inviting some junior people so they kind of get a feeling? Look at male and female and people of color, et cetera. So we really try, and location is important. You mentioned operations versus development. So we really try and make sure, are we giving everybody a chance? Because what we expect is when someone comes to a conference, what they learn, I think the last time was like, what 3 things are you gonna take back? Well, what 3 things are those people gonna take back and share? And so if you have a diverse group going, you get a much more expansive group to learn about what they learned when they get home.
Yeah, I'll just add, there's 3 kind of key things, right, to growth. It's education, experience, and exposure. And we are very mindful and purposeful of those 3. So we look at all of our talent, but we are certainly looking at folks that could use perhaps more exposure. Maybe it'd be good for them to come to a conference like this. So being purposeful, and then what did you learn, and then share. When they come back, we ask them to do a lunchtime session or something, share with us what you learned and what you observed. Not just the academics of what I've learned, but what did you see? What were some of the talks? How did people interact with you? So I think that allows it to scale as well.
Well, here's another question which is interesting. Should we emphasize economic benefits of a career in STEM? Might that help? Is that the primary reason to go and do space stuff? The economic benefits?
Economic incentives in terms of?
No, well, on average, people in STEM make higher salaries on average than the general population in the US. I mean, should that be emphasized?
If I understand the question right, how do we incentivize people to join the industry?
No, what it's asking is if we turned up the gain on really pushing the economic benefit of working in STEM, would that help attract more people in, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, as an industry, we're among the highest paid, most interesting work. We really do stand out. I think I saw a statistic that said we're about 20% average salary higher than the average STEM career here in the United States. So, we pay more. certainly everyone tends to think about high tech and Silicon Valley and stock options and so on, but we're doing much more of that as an industry. In fact, we now have companies that are, are earlier stage, and some of them are being bought and so on. So there is more opportunity to make money. Having said all that, I still usually find at the end of the day, the differentiator is the passion people have in the industry. Correct. And that's what ultimately brings them in. And frankly, when I'm interviewing someone, that's what I'm looking for, is just someone who has that, that look of excitement, like, I really want to work in this place. Now, we need to pay them fairly. We want to compete against other industries, so we don't want to lose them. But it's really the excitement of the industry that pulls them in.
Any other comments on that?
I agree with Steve. It can't hurt, but that's not the only thing.
Okay. All right. So each of you, this is a question, the same question for each of you. What does success look like? How will the space workforce be different in 2030 than it is today? So we're only, 7 years away, right? How's it going to be different? What does success look like?
Well, it was per that earlier question. Let's see what this conference looks like in 7 years, and that will be a huge metric.
Oh, that's one measure, right?
But I think success is when we don't have to purposely do it anymore, right? It's when it's just natural. It's when, things are balanced and diversity is accepted, and you don't have to have that purposeful look at, who's going to a conference, who's actually, doing this or that. It's just natural. And it sounds like a really easy answer, but I can tell you that as I've watched, the workforce change at Lockheed Martin over the past 34 years, and I think Lockheed Martin is an extremely good employer, but the culture has changed. I have watched it change. I've watched the acceptance change, and now, for the most part, it is just very, very natural that, there's women at the table, and our executive leadership team in space is our VPGMs. 2/3 of them are women. So it's just natural now, and I think that's the real success, is when you don't have to worry about it anymore.
I hope Sonia's right. I hope she's right. But I personally believe it's something we're going to have to work in for decades.
Quite some time.
Yeah, because I've studied cases where there was companies who declared victory. Their numbers look great, inclusion, they're doing really well, and they said, okay, we got it, it's natural. And then invariably, the numbers just change.
Absolutely. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. No.
And again, I think even like earlier stage companies, they tend not to think about these kinds of things. So that's why I feel like it's something you have to continue to work at. I think over time, I'm hoping that people will see that having a more diverse workforce naturally gives you a competitive advantage. Yeah. And that will be well documented. And so one of the questions that I still get, which is, so what's more important to you, diversity or having a top talent workforce? I'm like, that's the same thing.
Same thing.
Right.
So the fact that people still ask that question tells me we're not there yet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think we have some place to go, but I do have a vision of the future.
I have a vision.
I have a vision.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve and I had the opportunity to be on a panel when the initiative was kicked off, and I remember being asked that question, and I said, well, when you stop seeing us on panels, that's probably kind of success, and I hope we can have a panel, in the near future where we talk about, oh my gosh, our problem is we have too many people. What are we going to do with all of these people? But I do agree with both of you. It's an asymptotic problem. You will never reach the goal, right? That journey has to just keep going for this to work. So we got a ways to go, but I like the beginning of our journey.
So success means you will not be invited to be on a panel.
This topic.
On this topic, that's right. On some other topic. Okay. A final audience question, which is very interesting. Other countries don't seem to struggle with a lack of STEM graduates. What are they doing that we're not?
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Well, yeah, I know when we work with, and I'm sure, Jay, you do as well, when we work with Australia, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, they all seem to also struggle for STEM graduates. We are restricted, I think. A lot of the people who come to the United States and go to our colleges or universities, if they're not United States citizens, oftentimes we can't hire them based on the work that we do. I think Northrop Grumman probably has that same issue. So that might be where the question's coming from, because there are a great number of graduates from U.S. universities that we can't hire, and that, I think, is a shame.
I mean, the one place I do see it is command economies. I mean, you got China where this is what you will be doing.
Right.
I don't think we should emulate that.
Right. Okay, we're going to do a lightning round now.
Okay.
You're allowed either one word to one sentence response to each of these, okay?
This is going to be tough.
Okay, and we might as well just go down the line. Okay.
Okay.
So what are you most excited about in space over the coming years? Jay?
I'm going to say, it's 2 words, inflection point. Where space used to be just about moving information from one area to another, we're about to embark on a whole new industry for space.
Democratization, opening up the frontier with the cost of access to space going down into building things, many more people and institutions are now going to get involved.
The discovery of space.
Discovery. Okay, great. There's a lot of young people in the audience today. How can they get involved in these efforts? So, Jay?
I start?
Yeah, we'll just keep.
Jump in. There's so much opportunity ahead. Jump in. I promise you, space and this industry will take you to levels that you couldn't even dream of or plan for.
Get involved on your campuses if you're the university students, AAA, SEDS, whatever, Women in Aerospace. These are great organizations to find like-minded individuals and be inspired.
Get an internship and get a variety of internships. I know it's sacrilegious for me to say don't get one with Lockheed Martin. Get a couple. Try things out.
Okay. What is one change companies can make today to strengthen diversity in their workforce?
They need to be more open. On my staff, I have a political science major, a communications major. We need to be more open and not look at the same old criteria that we used to use for decades. So I would say just be more open to the talent coming in.
I heard someone say something wonderful last week. They said if you've been lucky enough to go up the elevator, make sure you send the elevator back down for others to get on board. So it's the giving back and bringing up others.
Yeah, I think it's the mentorship that really.
Mentorship, okay. What will be some of the skills the space workforce will need most in the coming decade? I mean, is it aerospace engineering? Is it computer science? Is it something else? Yeah.
I think right now I'm already seeing a change. It used to be a lot of the hardware, mechanical, let's get this system built and put up there. But I think what you're seeing a lot more of is get a system that is much more multifunction. So software, let's add different capabilities and techniques while the system is up there, especially when you're thinking about a constellation. So I do think we're moving away from hardware solving everything, and software firmware is going to be that enabler moving forward.
So what skills should they actually aim for?
I think certainly embedded software, FPGA development. I think we would all just grab any FPGA developer right now because there's a shortage. But honestly, it's the way you think, right? The mechanics and the tools, whether it's software or hardware or firmware or whatever, that's how you translate the applications that you're bringing forward. So I generically said software, but I was really trying to say it's not just those electricals and mechanicals that used to be like, we want you here and we'll figure everything out. It's those other disciplines now that I think are going to get up to or even past the majority of the skill sets that we need.
Steve?
Multidisciplinary. I think the nature of our industry, it's always been that way since Apollo, but the ability to be able to move across different areas, and I know it's hard to pick that as a major coming out of MIT.
There is no major called multidisciplinary.
But what you do need to learn is to learn how to learn.
Yes.
So you could start with something, and during the course of your career, you'll continue to learn across multiple areas, and then I think you become very powerful to the industry.
And really associated with that, I think the simulation and modeling is going to be very, very critical, and that's multidisciplinary software, but that really being able to envision it before you have to build it is going to be critical.
Okay. So here's I want you to think back in your past, all right, each of you, all right? What's the best piece of career advice or guidance that you have ever gotten?
Yeah, the best piece of advice I ever got, and unfortunately I got it later, I wish I had it earlier in my career, take a chance, take a risk. Don't be comfortable or too comfortable, but just take a chance. I wish I had learned that earlier in my career. I think I would have done some different and better things.
Do you mind saying when that was and what you did?
So like many of us entering the workforce, I feel like I didn't want to say something because I might be wrong. They might figure out that I don't know everything, and that would put me at a detriment. And much later on in my career, maybe dozen to 15 years in, I was assigned to one of these mentorship and growth kind of leadership programs, and my mentor actually said, how come you don't bring things up in a meeting? Why is that? And I said, well, you know, sometimes it's the boss is there, the boss's boss is there, I shouldn't say something, they're the authority figure. But really, it was just me, like, what if I say something, what if I fail, right? I think a lot of people worry about that, and I think, thank goodness, in industry now, there's a lot more, not only tolerance, but there's actually proactive thought on take a risk, take a calculated risk. Fail fast and fix it is the term we use in our company. It's okay to fail. We do hard things. We don't do things that you get a recipe book, right? So be uncomfortable. That's what I think we and our leadership needs from us.
All right, Steve, career advice?
We might have the same mentor.
Same person.
So it's an antithesis to even say this, but failure is an option. You know, Apollo 13, of course, sending humans into space, Webb telescope, you don't want a failure. But innovation happens through failure, through risk-taking. And I think one of the things where I think we're trying to be smarter as we go in the future is to build architectures where things can fail, but still the mission, and you still be safe at the end of the day. But you know, without taking a risk, joining a company, it didn't work out. Honestly, in my career, some of the best lessons I had in my career are things that didn't work, and I learned a lot from those to make things better.
Good. Sonia?
And I would say ask why. There's a lot of what we do that, you know, we've maybe done it that way for 30 years, and maybe we've done it that way for 30 years because it is the right way to do it. But maybe we've done it for 30 years because Jay stuck his finger in a light socket 30 years ago when we had to write a process. You know, we have all the warning labels now,
okay?
right?
25
Remember?
years ago.
25 years. But, you know, we have warning labels now. The hot coffee is hot. There's a lot of things we do because of failures or mistakes in the past. And it really opens, my senior engineers love it. I promise you they love it when someone says, and why do you do that? And they have to explain it. And sometimes, again, very good reason, but other times it's like, you know what? I don't know why. We've just always done it that way. Let's think of a different way. And so asking why in a very innocent, you know, just, I don't understand. I think when you're new, you have that privilege of asking why, and it's not an insult. So I really, really encourage that.
Great. Okay, we've only got about just over 5 minutes. Concluding thoughts.
I take inspiration to folks like Steve and Sonia here. Like, we as an industry only can push further by leaning on each other. I don't know why it took us so long to do this. Frankly, I just don't understand because, again, we solve really hard problems together as an industry. And I hope people will start seeing that we don't just fight amongst each other to try to get whatever program, that we really lean on each other, and that's what it's going to take to get that next generation of talent. And I hope that they can see that there's something larger than our companies or our programs. And if they can see that through what we're trying to do here, I feel really, really good about the future.
Oh, good. Steve, concluding thoughts.
We work in the coolest industry, second to none. Yeah. It is super exciting. And, you know, as one of our goals, I think, as an industry is to expand humankind out into the solar system and beyond. And I do believe that how those future pioneers will be should look like the people on planet Earth. And so I actually think not only should we be exciting, but we should be leading the way for other industries.
So it sounds like you want to see the equivalent of the Apollo 13 control room just look very different.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, Sonia, concluding thoughts.
I would just say, I think everything we've discussed today is really about making a connection and making connection with, you know, from K to 12, making connection in our colleges, making sure we keep a connected workforce. And I think that is really critically important. It always has been for humans. We love that connection and we want to be involved. And I think if we can just stress that and really demonstrate that as an industry and as employers, I think that's really, really what will bring it all together.
Great.
Dan, do you have?
Well, I do. I mean, so, you know, unlike you, I see 18-year-olds coming in, right? And the reality is the 18-year-old population is changing dramatically, right? I mean, just dramatically. And so, you know, it is really important that we continue to attract that population into this business. To first order, of course, people who come to MIT are probably already interested in science and technology, otherwise they probably wouldn't have come, but okay. But attracting them into aerospace is also very important. And right now, I completely agree with you. We're at an inflection point. We're moving from a government-dominated business to one that's dominated by many companies, many private companies. And so the future looks very bright because of all the entrepreneurial energy that's going to be there, right? And getting involved in this at this exciting time is both important and will make a difference, for our future. So, I encourage students to go on and explore this career, as a future, right? So it's just really, really important. Now, earlier on, one of you mentioned about the fact that the population of leadership looks very different from the younger population. That is what it is, but it also shows how important it is for people of talent to be able to rise quickly in those companies. So there should be no barrier to just rising on the basis of merit, which is what I believe you'll find in that younger population. And then it will be different. The future will be different.
Well said.
All right, so thank you all very much. Thank the audience. Thank you for the questions.